to see you again, Steve.
Good to be seen.
Now, I'm disappointed. You know what I'm going to talk about, eh?
No, what did I do?
No.
So my wife starts conversations like this.
You forgot to bring your SM7 mic.
I did.
I thought you left it here the other night.
Yeah.
And I was like, last night I was setting up the session, and the mics and stuff. I was like, it took me, I think I spent like an hour and a half looking for the extra SM7.
Sad.
I was like, where is it? Where did I put it? And when you came this morning, I said, oh, I forgot my mic. Oh, that's a good thing because I thought I lost it.
Sleep-deprived brain.
So now I'm using the Lewitt 640 TS.
Well, I'm sure we'll hear in the comments how you sound.
Yeah, hopefully I sound okay.
Yeah. Do you think you will sound better or not as good?
Oh, that's a good question. It's going to be different.
That's the right answer.
Okay,
that's
different.
The right answer. Do I look better in this shirt or that shirt?
Different.
Maybe you just look different.
I've been married for 25 years.
You look beautiful in both.
Been producing for 22 years.
Both guitar takes were perfect.
There you go.
I happen to like the second one better. But they're both brilliant.
Talking about music production, music producer.
I see what you did there.
There you go. I'm not too bad at that.
You're professional.
Yeah,
You should have a website.
I've been around. What is the role of a music producer? In a nutshell, or you can elaborate a bit more even.
I guess to me, this topic starts with what was the role of a music producer.
I like that.
Right? Like that, what was it traditionally? Was it meant to be?
Okay.
And then what does it become? Maybe
How
that
far
could be
you
the
wanna go
journey
back?
of the conversation.
Yeah.
And how old are you? Like, where are we going?
No, exactly. How far do you want to go back?
Barney Rubble.
Because we both started around the same time,
Yes.
I guess,
Yes. Yeah, and it was an era then, like I think we caught kind of maybe the tail end of the era where like there was a guy who sat on the couch and drank coffee and articulated his thoughts on everything he was hearing to the other person who was at the console.
Yeah.
While the artist was over there and the A&R person was over there and the management was over there.
Yeah.
Everybody's in this room.
So AKA Rick Rubin.
Doing a thing, right? And there was that record producer era, which just every time I see those videos, I'm like, wouldn't that have been a great time to be doing music?
I know. Like, Rick Rubin.
Everybody's got a cigarette and a beer and they're just making records.
And funny enough, I heard a story about Rick Rubin.
Yeah.
Bring his own couch in session. He had movers moving his personal couch into recording rooms.
Yes. And he came from his hotel room.
Oh, yeah.
Down the road in a foreign country because they flew him there to make a record, right? So that's what, in my mind, that's where the record producer was before. And the debate can be had as we go through this, and imagine after this is done, it can carry on online. But was that the better era, or is today's era better? Where you get to wear all the hats and you get to drive your own session and all that kind of stuff, right? So they're very different. So I guess traditionally, what was the record producer in your mind? How do you sum up what was his job, the Rick Rubin job?
A bit like and I think that is still happening today too, but I think it's, in my book, it's like a contractor building a house, a builder, He takes care of what? He's not going to build everything, but he's going to, he's going to hire a taper, he's going to hire, a frame guy and, stuff like that. A painter and all that stuff, He looks at the budget.
Yeah.
Goes with the, think of the plans and all that stuff, So he doesn't work on all those things, necessarily, but he does manage everything out of that project. He's the contractor. So the role of a record producer back in the day, and even, like from what I know, from what I've been doing when I was producing a lot, was, taking care of the full budget. I know let's say I have like 20 grand to work with. Okay, I need to hire these musicians, and I set up the band I was going to work with in the studio, and I was mixing also, which is the role of the modern
we'll get
producer.
There.
We'll get there after, but initially I would say a bit like overseeing the budget, overseeing who's going to be on the project, who's going to make the music arrangements, who has the final say, basically the relationship between the band, the artist, and the record label.
Right. So that's what I was going to say. There was the executive producer role back in the day.
He had the money.
Which is now funds. Usually the artist is the executive producer, right? They save up and they come to a thing.
Exactly.
But back then, So you're working between A&R and the label and the executive producer and the engineer, and to my mind, there was a lot of the producer in my mind. As you were talking, I was thinking how would one of the big roles was just translation. Mm-hmm. You're translating the vision of this artist through your filter, and then making it go onto tape and selling it to the A&R and selling it to the label and selling it to all these things, right? So there was a lot of translation there that gets lost a bit today too, because artists have their vision and they kind of come in. So it's different. And producers back in the day really, really imprinted themselves onto productions.
Yes.
Which I notice. Like you can listen to old records and you can tell who produced it by the sound of it, no matter what style of music it is or who the artist is.
It's funny.
Right? So that was also why the label would hire you and pair you with this artist. And then you would either make the artist better or you'd destroy their dreams. You hear those stories.
Yeah.
This guy came in and I didn't recognize myself and I hate my record. Right?
Oh, yeah.
So you hear those stories. So
sure.
It goes all different ways. Anyway, so the producer had a very powerful, I think, position because they were the translators of vision back then.
Yeah.
So okay.
And you're right about, this sounds like this producer. I remember when I was a teenager, I was looking at credits, on an album. The first thing I was reaching for, who produced this album?
Yes.
Was it a Mutt Lange album,
And
Def
that's changed a lot now.
That part changed a lot.
That part has changed
for
a lot.
Sure.
Like that's kind of a lost piece for me, as a listener, that's a lost magic thing that I miss. I miss that. I miss the little CD book.
Yeah.
And I'm like, dude, I knew it was him.
Who played on that one? Okay, who produced this one,
And he hires his people and goes to his studios. And like, it's a neat.
Yeah. I remember when Our Lady Peace worked, it was their third album, I think. And they went to Hawaii to record that album. And it was produced by Bob Rock.
Yeah.
And I was a big fan of Bob Rock back then, so, the Metallica albums and all, And it was like, oh, okay. And it has a sound.
Yes.
And it has like the footprint, the Bob Rock footprint.
And even artists on their fourth album would hire different, this is that U2 album, right? Like
exactly.
They slot who was producing what and when, and you can hear those influences. So that, to me, that's a really magic piece of history that's kind of been lost.
And you're right. We don't find these a lot anymore.
No. Like branded producers, right? So the producer then is driving the boat from the couch he brought from Carthage brought the couch.
I need a couch.
I know.
I miss my red couch I had in Quebec.
Yeah, those couches, man.
Oh my gosh.
How many times in the studio, it's like 4 PM, you're like, I'm just going to sit on the couch and return a couple emails, and that's the last thing you remember? Like how many times I fell asleep on a studio couch in my life? Like it's a sad number of times.
I think I'll get rid of my drums and just put in the couch.
What a strange life we've had. Okay, so the role. So this guy, that traditional music producer dude, or chick, there was some pretty epic chicks doing production.
Yeah,
like there was an era where. Anyway, so this person, how far back does it go? Modern production, for me, a lot of times I'm co-writing, right? Like production starts with, hey, what's your name? And I have some ideas in a notebook.
Yeah.
Right? How far back did it go? Do you know what I mean? At what point back in the day do you think the producer came into the mix?
Man, that's a good question.
Honestly, it is an interesting thought.
I'm not sure.
Yeah. Like there was a bit of like the A&R, we found this artist, they've got this thing and we're ready to go to the studio. Let's bring
let's bring this guy.
There's a bit of that, right?
Yeah, there was a lot of that.
Which made for interesting things. So we're talking about artists that have done 3 albums in their style and now somebody's imprinting onto that same songwriting.
Because I remember, I was playing in a band back in the late 90s and we had a management company from Nashville back then and we flew to Nashville.
Yeah.
And we worked with that producer and he hired that engineer, went to the engineer's studio. And so that was my first introduction in real life, before even doing production myself, to engage with a record producer. He was selected by the management company. We didn't have any labels. We were actually shopping for a label and, so we're working on a demo.
Back then, that was the thing.
Yeah. You work with a producer, a studio, so you build up your demo and you try to showcase in front of labels.
Yes.
I did that stuff.
What a magic time.
Yeah.
/ terrifying time.
Yeah. Nobody signed us, but it was pretty
That's
magic.
why you're here with me.
Yeah, of course. You're the result of all of this, man.
I am the sad ending.
And there you go.
To this story.
Thank you, Steve.
Sit in a room with me on a weekday. Oh boy,
I love it.
All right, and then, but where did they start? I know the producer was very involved all the way to the very end. So through the mix, through the thing, like producers would fight for their vision. Like you hear those stories, right?
Yes.
Of producers and engineers like boxing in the hallways over the volume of a snare or whatever, right? Like so that it was an interesting time. So, and then A&R jumps in and they want a different snare than those two, right? So that's a whole nother, you know what I mean? The guy in the nice suit has a thought about this. So yeah, anyway, sorry, you were going to say?
So I was going to say, okay, like when you started producing, was 20 years ago, 22 years ago, whatever. In those days, you started as a producer or as a mix engineer or an arranger, musician?
I started as a musician, a hack musician that bought a whole bunch of stuff to record myself. Ooh, if I get more tracks, I can record more of me at 2 a.m. because my friends are asleep. All two of them are sleeping.
All two of them.
Both of them are sleeping.
Wow, what a nice life.
And so I know. And so that was it. And then if I got some more mics, I could record. And then I started to learn better mics are better mics and better gear is better gear. So I started, in the back bedroom of my parents' house in California, and I just started putting gear in there and plugging it in and running cables,
All that
I didn't know how to spell patch bay or whatever. Like I was just plugging stuff into things and banging on things, and the mics were facing the wrong way and whatever. And so it was that. Like I was in high school doing this. Mm-hmm. And so, and then I got enough stuff that my friends are like, oh, hey, can you record my song too? And that was it. And then I was off. And I didn't even know what I was doing. I was like, sure, man, come over. Like, I just like doing this. I like twiddling the thingies, the little knobby bits, and making things sound neat to me. I don't know what hertz and I don't know what any of these things are, right? I'm just twisting knobs. And so that's it. And so then, I guess the short answer is I was a hack musician, songwriter that became a studio owner accidentally. And then there was nobody else around, so I learned how to use the stuff, right? And then I started giving my advice to people on what they were doing because I was the only other person there. And so then you technically become a producer, right? So,
yeah, exactly.
So that's it for me. And that's still what I do. Like I still do exactly that.
Exactly.
I just twiddle the little doodle ads with people and play music in a room until it sounds done.
Nice.
And so, yeah, that's that.
So what do you think is the role of a music producer in 2025 compared to way back?
All the roles. Honestly. Like I think most of the time you're the only person in the room.
That's the reality.
That's it. It's you and this dude with a guitar and a dream, right? And he's got kind of songs but he's missing a bridge. And so you're helping him with his bridge, and you know enough to know that, hey, if we go to the minor 6 for this bridge, it's going to do something to this song, right? And so you know enough as a musician to do that piece and to, this rhymes with pencil, right? Maybe you then used a stencil. And so now you're a songwriter, and don't steal that.
Too late, man. I have it on tape.
So that's it. So you're starting from songwriting, and now you're the guy plugging in the mics, and then you're the guy that's giving advice on the talkback, and then you're the guy that's mixing, and then you're the guy that's uploading, right? So it's like you are all the people in the credits.
Wearing several hats.
All the hats. Yeah. It was a whole list of credits in a CD book, and now it's one idiot.
Yeah. The star of my life.
One of us.
Yeah.
And an artist with a dream. And yes, and at the same time, there's the other piece that many people is oft overlooked, but there's the psychological piece of it all too. Where you've got a band in the room and you're the only person there and they're fighting about something. And now you're a part-time psychiatrist as well, right? So there's this whole, it's interesting. Like you're working with an artist emotionally during a very emotional time in their life, oftentimes.
Yeah.
When you get a 23-year-old kid and he wrote a song about his dad or whatever, and he's crying in the thing and you're trying to make the mic work. And it's a weird, so anyway, all that to say, it's a strange gig.
It is.
In the modern era.
Yeah. It's the same for me. When I started, actually, this is all I know.
Yeah.
Same. Wearing several hats.
Yeah.
That's all I know as being a music producer since 2003 when I first started. And the first album I produced, he was a friend of mine, was an established Christian French artist. Yeah. And he called me up. I remember at the time I was finishing production school.
I got to say that is not a sentence that was on my bingo card for today.
I know.
An established French Christian artist. That was not.
If you
was not in the bingo cards for today's sentences.
If you want a niche market, that's a niche market.
It's amazing, man.
And this is where I made most of the productions I worked on.
Yeah.
In that small niche, I was kind of back then, now it's another story, but back then it was like, was maybe me and another guy doing that work, So we got all the albums and all the projects to work on. People from America, from Canada, Quebec, and especially from Europe.
That's awesome.
France, Switzerland, Belgium, Africa. Even.
Yeah.
It's crazy. But
because you speak Mandarin, right?
I do.
Yeah, I thought so. I can tell by your accent.
Oh, yeah, of course. What else is new? So that's all I know. I'm used to just wearing several hats. So the first album, I want to come back to the first album I produced was a live album.
Okay.
From that artist.
Right into the frying pan.
Exactly. So I just I was off the program. I went through the production program. I was just off of that program. First summer he calls me, hey,
you get one take.
Are you able to produce a live album? Say, yeah, sure,
of course.
let's do it. yeah. And then hang up the phone.
Sweating.
Whoa.
Sweating.
How do I do this, So, and that was my first production, my first gig as a music producer. So what I had to do is, do some research. Okay, I knew exactly where the church we're going to record at. Yep. It was a big church, big hall. Okay, so I made all the decisions. So I hired musicians. Yep. I wasn't a very good mixer back then. I was just out of school, so I didn't want to just jump into mixing the album right away. So I hired my mentor, who was a mastering and mixing engineer. So we hired this guy.
You should go to Mixdown online.
I should. I heard about it.
Good course. Me too. It's decent.
Good guy.
Decent courses.
He looks like a good guy, anyways. From what I've heard. But so I had to. I was the drummer, so I was the musician. I was the head of arrangements, also. Hiring the musicians and overseeing all the music arrangement, all that stuff, So, and recording decisions also. Okay, let's do this one.
You're only 20. What are you now? 24, 25?
Back then?
Now,
yeah.
Big 24.
I'm just getting to the 30s.
Mid 20s.
Mid 20s.
I wish. It was a hard year.
But, I learned a lot of stuff, though, I have to say. The only thing I did, not the only thing, I did a lot. Yeah. But on the record itself, I wasn't the one mixing. I assisted, so I learned a lot by assisting the mixing engineer. We had someone else mastering the album. I did the editing. So that's the only thing I did in Cubase back then with
it was in your
Cubase SX2 or something with my small PC computer. Did all the editing, because we recorded back then the full service in front of an audience.
What did you record it on?
Boy, it was on hard drives directly.
Okay.
Not ADATs, but a similar system. I forgot the name.
It's like a radar or something?
Yeah, no, it wasn't radar, but it was
one of the poor man's
else.
radars?
Yeah, no, exactly. But it's very similar to this.
Yep.
Was it? I forgot the brand though.
It'll come to you in a minute.
Yeah, probably. Yeah,
but so
like 24-track system.
Yeah,
the 24-track system, 44.1 16-bit back then.
That was stressful, man.
And someone else was recording, and actually the mixing engineer, I hired him to make the recording.
Perfect.
So that was okay. I was playing drums anyways. Yep. Recorded twice in front of a live audience once, and the following day in front of an empty room.
Yeah.
And I just blend both together and did I guess a decent job because the artist was pretty happy and people are just starting to call afterwards.
Yeah.
And to
You're
get
still doing music.
And I'm still here.
Yeah. They didn't run you out of town.
But that was a crazy project to start on.
Yeah.
A live album,
Yeah.
But I honestly, I listen to this album now and I kind of like it.
It is weird, man. There's some magic to that's an old stuff I did. And I'm like, I don't know if I could do this again.
I know.
I don't know if I could, I know too much now.
Yeah.
To do this, the little mistakes that make it awesome. Whatever. I love it.
Oh, but there's that story I have to tell you, man. Of that album, there was like an acoustic part, section of the concert that was recorded. So 2 acoustic guitars and the guy singing a medley of his songs.
Yeah.
Okay. So that little thing, we didn't record it the following day because it was no click, nothing.
Right.
Okay. It was just like feel
free.
Okay, which is fine. But the problem is one of the guitar players' acoustic guitar wasn't tuned very well.
Oh boy.
There was a guy in charge of tuning the guitars. I think he failed that part.
Yeah.
So it was just a bit sharp all the way through. So we had to go back into the studio. But my friend Kenny was the guitar player, and he's that amazing.
That helps.
Guitar player. He's
he could line up with himself.
I think, man, he was born with a click in his butt.
Yeah.
That kind of guy.
Yep.
So he was able to go back in the studio, listen to himself.
Yeah.
Overdub himself while listening to himself.
He saved himself.
And he just like re-record the whole thing.
He saved himself.
Yeah.
They don't make people like that anymore either.
No,
so,
not a lot.
Yeah, I was thinking of my first, formats. Yeah, that's fun. Those old digital 20, and you're so committed, man. And you're like bouncing tracks down.
Yeah.
Remember that? Like bouncing down to 2 tracks. And so, okay, so you're producing. Did you ever do, or have you done any or many projects where you are the producer only?
Honestly, that was the closest to being a producer only.
I've done that a couple times, and I twitch.
Oh, seriously?
It's like, the analogy just popped in my head. My mom is in her 80s, and she'll like, we'll go visit her in California still, and she'll like, I'll drive you to the airport. And we're driving to the airport, and I'm like, in the passenger seat, just like, let me drive. I love you, but let me drive. You beautiful lady. Do you know this feeling?
Oh, I know the feeling.
Where you're like, just go, mom, go. Right? And it's the sweetest, most amazing woman ever. But I'm just like, I just want to drive. Right? And so it's that. So there's a bit of that. When you're back in engineering, I'm like, let's just do another take. Like, just give me the go. Right? Like he knows where to come in. Like you don't have to do the whole thing. Like just go.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? Like you've got the rhythm of the singer, and you know what they want in there. So there's a bit of that.
Yeah.
And so I've struggled a couple times at being the guy on the couch.
I would struggle myself if I was in those shoes, for sure.
And vice versa. I just did that session a couple weeks ago, and it was the same. I brought it because I was leaving town, so I brought another engineer. And so the first day we were together, and there was this whole like, we're both producer engineers, and so there's this weird like, I'm running today, but you're running tomorrow. And so we were both like, sorry, man, like, sorry. It was a lot of that. Like, he's like, maybe we should tune the, sorry, man. I'm like, no. Like, I was like, yeah, you should tune. He's right. What he said, right? So this is a weird, when you're used to wearing all the hats.
That's the thing.
It's a weird thing to take some off, right?
Yeah.
Or just engineer or
totally.
just produce.
Totally agree. Yeah, that was the closest,
yeah,
of getting like the old school type of music production or music producer's role. After that, it was like, wearing all the hats. I started to mix, I always send my mastering to someone else.
Always.
That's the only thing.
Agree.
I always did. Recently, maybe not as often, but back then, especially when working with on paid products, and paid albums, of course, I'm going to use this guy and use this guy. So I always had like the same mastering engineers that I worked with and I was used to.
And you've mentioned, I don't know if we ever talked about it, but you've mentioned that you were fortunate to have an assistant at one point.
That came later, assistant to set up my mixing sessions.
And
that was at the time where I had more mixing gigs than production gigs.
And that's something that I think most of us that wear all the hats would always be happy to give one of the hats to.
Yes.
You retime the drums and pick a better vocal take than that. And
exactly.
That's one hat I could give away for the rest of my life. The session setup. That's the one for me in the workflow, right? Where you've done the songwriting, that's fun, and you've done the recording, and that's fun, and you've done the vocal day, and that's fun, and you've done the overdubs, and that's fun, and then now all this crud is on your screen. And you've got, your playlists, and that's when you're like, oh, I don't want to do this anymore. Because the mix is right on the other side of that little hill. You've just got to get over this 2-day hill to get to the faders and the fun part, right? But that's the one part where I'm like, oh, I hate
Can you
life.
Just set up my session, at least.
Routing and bussing and...
But even the editing part, I always did the editing part,
same.
but that is like, takes a lot of energy.
And a lot of time.
For sure. It's time consuming.
But it's hard to farm it out because you were there. Like, I remember what they wanted. This was the part that they cried, so I want to get some of that.
Yeah.
Right? Like, you know what's under the hood.
Exactly.
And I've sent it out before and I had to come back, and I'm like, you took all the breathing out. That's the best part of this artist to me, is the way they do it. Like those where you're like, that's the part I loved, and you edited it all out because that's what they do in Nashville or at this era in time or whatever, right? So it is an interesting.
It is.
So, okay. So
because there's a lot of advantages to wear all the hats.
Yes.
Like this.
Yes. And disadvantages.
Of course.
There is a bit of, you fall in love with something, like, and they're like, hey, you forgot all the guitars on this mix. And you're like, oh. I thought it sounded perfect or whatever, right? Like you get so into you get so far down the rabbit hole.
Yeah.
You forget that there was another verse or something you're supposed to. So there's that. And vice versa. For me, I will get to that midnight point where I'm like, this is awful. I'm terrible. I should quit. Why did anybody let me do this? Right? So you get to that point where it all sounds bad. You come back the next day and you're like, yeah, it's not bad. Right? But there is something about that when you get so close.
Yeah, I would say like for an advantage on being able to wear all the hats is for if you're working with a client. I think it's more budget friendly.
Oh man.
Okay, like big time. That's one
It's
advantage.
the only reason you can do it.
Yes. So, but when you have a bit of budget, I think a good music producer in that case is going to be the one that knows when he can delegate something to someone better than who he is. Yeah. Like, for example, I was producing an album for that girl, and I think she was from Martinique.
Gesundheit.
What?
What?
Exactly.
What did you say?
Exactly.
Everything you say sounds like a delightful wine.
I know.
It sounds like a really good wine.
I would drink that one.
Like words you say, I'm like, that sounds delicious.
Basically, it's an island, you know.
See? I knew it was like a wine.
Something like that.
So anyway, I want to be you. It's amazing.
Man.
French people.
Oh, you're like a vision.
I mean, yeah, my bar is low.
Man,
I'm just happy we fed the dog most nights.
Get a life.
Yeah. Yeah. Yep.
Okay, I have some ideas for you. We'll talk after.
Thank you.
Man. So, going back to that project, so there were like a couple of songs that were jazz songs, and another one that was a bit more reggae song, you know, and wearing all the hats, on most of the projects I produced for clients, I was the drummer. Mm-hmm. Okay. I'm a pretty square rock pop drummer. Mm-hmm. Okay. This is basically the style of drumming I do. So for jazz drumming, forget it. That's not me. Okay. So I try, you know what? Okay. We'll work that out with other people, you know, but I'm going to try out the reggae song, you know, so let's try to reggae that groove. And I remember Jimmy, my guitar player and arranger I was working with at the time, was like, that's pretty cool. That's good stuff. I was listening to the tracks after. It's like, that sucks, man.
Yeah.
That's so bad. So, you know, I fired myself as a drummer.
Good.
And we used the studio musicians in Florida, remote recording session with a friend that I have there. He had access to a big studio.
Yeah.
Awesome musicians. Yeah. They nailed it. I was like with the artist in the studio assisting the recording session live, you know, on a Zoom type system. And it was awesome.
Yeah.
You know, that's why, you know.
And that's fun.
And it would have been, if I would have kept my drum recording, it would have sucked, you know? Yeah. So sometimes it's not about pride. It's about, you know, just fire yourself.
Yes.
There's someone better than you to do that task you're looking to do, you know?
To an earlier thing we were talking about, I find for me, and I verbalize it with artists, that this isn't me. This isn't my project. It's not my sound.
Exactly.
It's not my opinion. It's not my, right? And so there's a bit of that now that artists expect, where they're not coming to you because they love your sound that they've heard all their life, like those classic guys, right?
Yeah.
It's like, well, you're breathing, and I can afford you, and my friend said you were good, so let's try this, right? And so there's a bit of like trying to figure out what they want. And so translation then is a different thing from the earlier conversation.
Totally.
Right? Where you're translating directly from an artist all the way through to the upload to Spotify. That's your translation journey, right? As opposed to just these little multi-directional bits, right? So that's an interesting thought.
Yeah, if we go back to the initial, like you said, you know, when we're younger, you know, looking at albums credits, okay, I want to be this guy.
Yeah.
Because it's produced by this guy. This is what the job I want to do. This is what happened to me back in high school, you know. I remember the teacher asking me, so what do you guys want to do, you know, when you get older? So I want to be a music producer.
I want to be poor.
It was like, what is this? Find another job. This is exactly what she told me. Find something else. I don't even know what that is.
She was smart.
You know?
You should send her an email. You were right. All those years ago.
So so I didn't listen.
Nope.
Became a music producer back then. But you know, with that same vibe, you know, we were talking about, you know, the sound they have, you know, that kind of approach. So the first few albums I was working on, I had to at some point kind of back off, because I remember that one project I was working on, I made the artist cry. Because it wasn't going my way, you know. It's like, oh, so you know what? If you don't want to take my idea, forget it, man. I'm not going to put my name on your album. So she started crying. So I said that was the time. So okay, maybe I'm overdoing it.
Yeah,
you know?
yeah.
So
maybe I'm
kind
wrong.
of toned down a bit and kind of, okay, this is not the same era.
Yeah.
You know, not the same thing, the same role as it used to be. Maybe, you know, maybe tweak that up.
It's your car.
You know.
it's your trip. Where do you want to go?
Yeah, exactly.
Right? I will help you drive there.
I wasn't dealing with labels and A&Rs and stuff. I'm dealing directly with the executive producer, which is the artist.
Yep.
The one bringing the funds.
Yes. Who's also the artist.
Exactly. The songwriter and all that stuff.
Yes. And they know where they want to go most of the time.
Yeah.
And the harder you fight it, the harder they fight. It is a weird thing.
Of course. So there was kind of an adjustment period.
Yeah.
But
and then learning not to take things personally.
Exactly.
It's so huge.
It's not about you.
Yeah.
It's
and
not
that's
about
a
you.
huge thing. Like, fine, you don't want my idea. And not take it personally, right?
Yeah.
Take your toys and go home.
Exactly.
Like to be just like, well, kind of your idea was good. Right? There's those times and throughout your life where you're like, that was a better idea than mine.
Yeah.
You didn't know the words. You didn't know how to say it. You didn't know what you were trying to say to the band, but I knew what you were trying to say to the band. And so let me tell them what you said. You said you want it more emotional, and this is what that means. And then they hear it and they go, yeah. Right? And so that, for me, that's kind of become more of the joy over time, is how instead of imprinting me, and it's how do I get better at translating you to this room full of people, right? Even the mix now. From the beginning, how do your original demo, like what your heart was, how do I translate that all the way through a mix? Now, if I'm the guy mixing it, right? And so, yeah, like it's an interesting.
It is.
It is an interesting journey.
So the question is, what is a music producer in 2025?
Yes.
What do you think?
Oh, a poor person that wants to be you. This is what I've learned today. If we're talking about me, a guy who wants to live on a wine island. I want to go live at Merlot or whatever.
Merlot,
whatever you said.
Martinique.
Yeah, that's
there
it.
You go.
Gesundheit. It's you say things cooler. Like I read names. Like when we do these mix down like things, and like I see a name and it's like, oh, Frank, and then you say their name and I'm like, that's not Frank at all. That had 7 syllables and it sounds
François.
Yeah, exactly. I'm like, what? I didn't even. The S is silent. So the music producer in 2025 is, I think, in a nutshell, the other person in the room. That's the answer that just came out of my head, and I don't know why.
Okay,
but that's
explain.
it. It's you've got an artist with a notebook and a guitar and some thoughts, and you're the only person there. And so they talk to you about what the song means and why they wrote it and what this verse means, and the amount of crying. Like people like, I've never told anybody this, but like how many sentences start with that in a studio now? For me, we're like, I never told anybody this, but this song is about, my little brother who this.
Yeah.
And so now you're the only person in the room to make this real, right? And so now we're on a journey. Now it's you and me, and we're going to take this thing and make it on Spotify, right? And so and you're the only other person there for that journey, right?
Okay, do you think artists, like indie artists today, in 2025, still hire music producers?
Sometimes without knowing it.
Oh, okay.
But they hire the other person in the room. Right? And I don't think they know what that title is. They will say a lot of times partway into a project, hey man, I'm going to make you the other producer or whatever.
Yeah.
Or I want you to co-produce this. Or they say, I would love for you to produce my album. I don't know which way is which. Right? And so I think from the initial meeting, you can get a feel of how that's going to go. They either come in and they're like, here's 7 examples of how I want my record to sound. I want these drums, this bass, this, and so you have those artists where you're like, all right, I will engineer your ideas. Right? And then you have people that are like, I've just got these songs. And I don't even know what style, right? And so you're the one pulling up.
Yeah.
Have you thought about this? And maybe we make it sound kind of like this. And you're pulling things up on iTunes. I do it all the time. And what if this song and this song combine to become yours and that? So, in that way, they didn't know they were hiring a music producer.
Yeah, I see.
Their friend said you were good and you could help.
So that's this is where the other guy in the room,
you're the help. You're the help. Like you're the safety.
I see.
You're the parachute. You're paramedic. You're the right. Like you're consoling, you're the parasol, like you're all these things to this person as they just do a thing.
Yeah.
Right? And so it's back to the first sentence you said, you're the contractor. I want to build a house, and I think I kind of want it to look like this one from this magazine. How do I do that?
Yeah.
And you go, here's how we do it. Let's pull the people together and let's build your house. And so I think that's it. You're the contractor to help them build their house. Right?
That's the best image.
Right, back to our opening sentence.
Music
So the role hasn't changed.
Yeah. Like
if it's still the first sentence we started with.
Yeah, on my side, I would say it haven't changed.
You do more things with your hands.
I think a producer
while you produce.
Now,
you're pressing the space bar.
Yes.
And you're moving the mics. You're doing more things with your hands.
Yeah.
But I think emotionally, mentally, you're still the contractor helping them build a house
without a couch.
without a couch. But with a wine cellar.
Exactly. You need the wine cellar.
Yes.
No, and I think, over time, there's another brand of music producers that kind of started up. Beat makers. All this side of
that's a different
things,
that's a different definition.
It is, but they're still they call themselves music producers.
Correct, but it's a different definition.
It is.
I think.
Okay, what do we...
I
agree with you, by the way.
Yeah, I haven't thought this through. But I, off the top of my head, with no forethought, my comment would be, you are, in that world, you are producing the music for an artist. Mm-hmm. And in the world we spend more time in, you are producing the artist's music.
Exactly.
Right?
So I like that.
That's it. That would be it.
I like that.
It's you're building the thing, and then the artist goes on top.
No, I like the way you sound.
Thank you. Or in our case, we're building it with them inside, in the middle, right?
That's the difference.
And so that's it. So
like
a lot of producers they produce without an artist, right? Like there's so many of these sites where it's brilliant, and I don't know if you ever spend time on these things.
No,
there's an
crazy.
entire podcast episode of these beat make producers.
Oh, they're great.
You're just like, holy cow!
I follow a few on
the
TikTok.
musicianship and the brilliance and the sonics, and they're in a room alone with a laptop and a bunch of blinky things.
And there's that guy on TikTok, he does like these super cool beats,
So good.
And he starts his videos like write something on this.
And it's
starts
like
a
this
song.
polyrhythmic.
It's awesome.
In the weird key, anyway. So those guys do it even without an artist most of the time. They're just producing.
I like that.
A product.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, so my answer to this, like in 2025, it's all of the above. There's so many things. If a lot of producers are self-produced musicians, a lot of them, they
more and more every day.
More and more for sure, so they're taking care of their own budget, artistic vision, recording, playing as
what a
musicians.
Time to
also.
be alive.
It is.
I to listen to this stuff.
And this is something that was impossible back in the 80s.
Yeah, it was impossible 10 years ago.
Maybe possible
on many levels.
Way more harder.
Yeah, to make competitive sounding products alone in a room.
Yeah.
To not even have the other guy in the room.
Exactly. And that is what 2025, and these days, this time of age, makes that role different than what it used to be.
Yep.
In a way.
It's a good time to be alive, though.
So I think it's a good time to end this.
It's a good time to, go be alive outside.
Not to end the podcast, but to end this topic, I think.
Yes.
Because we still have to go through Q&A.
Yeah.
We have one good question.
You did have a question.
Yeah.
You told me you had a good one. What is
All right. So let's do it. Okay, the question. I have my herbal tea.
As you should.
As I should.
I have my 3-gallon vat of coffee.
Yeah, that I made for you earlier.
You did. It's good.
It's good coffee.
Yeah.
I'm not that bad.
I've had worse.
You had worse for sure. We had breakfast.
Just at breakfast. Yeah, just at that diner.
I was looking at your coffee like, whoa.
It was all right.
I was good with my chamomile.
It was a little oil slick on top. Little swirly rainbow.
So the question we have from Jordan, he's asking, let me check it out. Do we always have to play on a click when recording? That's a good question.
That is a good question.
The click.
What do you think?
I'm in love with the click.
You're a drummer.
I'm a drummer. I love the click. I'm not slave to the click, but I use the click to my advantage. And I feel the music by playing on the click. I love the click.
It is interesting. And I've over the years come to truly appreciate the answer being yes and no.
Me too, yeah.
And a lot of my appreciation has come from listening to artists. And there's something about, when the click became really, really prevalent in recorded history, the 90s and, in there. And there's something so beautiful, and as a drummer, you appreciate this. There's something so beautiful about a band building out of the bridge into the final chorus, and they're going from, a level 5 to a level 10, and it's building, and the entire band is building, and they should speed up, but they don't. And that, to me, that dun dun rock duck duck boom, and they land the one, and it just stays with the click. That, to me, is such a beautiful sound. It's beautiful when an entire band stays on the click and they don't speed up because they can't. And that's, to me, and it's kind of nerdy. And as we've spoken about, my love of Life Bar is low, but to me, that is a thing. That is a thing of beauty. When you hear a band hold back, and they're all animal players, like they're the best session players in the world, and they're just that fill on click. Also, though,
and as a drummer, it feels good too. I'm telling you,
so beautiful when you land the one. You stick the landing. At the same time, as a vinyl lover and aficionado of beautiful old records. When I get myself a bottle of Gluty Blue, Jaglé Bazaar, from the island of somewhere.
Martinique.
Yes. And I put on something vinyl, and they all get excited and they speed up. There's something beautiful about that too. Like they're into the fourth repeat on the fade out, and they're speeding up because it's 26 people in the Capitol basement.
Yeah.
And it's just a whole bunch of brothers and sisters, and they're just, and they're doing a thing, and it speeds up.
But that was back in the day.
And there's something beautiful about that too.
Yeah, for sure.
So the answer to me from a listener standpoint is,
okay, but in today's age,
no, I don't know.
Like for me, honestly, it depends on the music genre.
And it depends on your need to overdub.
Yes.
And edit. That's the biggest thing to me. If I've got a beautiful three-piece jazz band, and they're just going to nail this puppy,
go ahead.
Make magic.
Because I think what's the most important is for the musicians to follow the drummer.
Yes.
So if the drummer is not on the click, but everyone follows the drummer,
yes,
it's going to sound good.
Yeah. And a great band, you can edit between takes even without a click.
Was it? I don't want to mess that up, but I think it was Weezer. But I'm not sure if it was Weezer or... It was one of these bands back in the 2000s that they went in the studio and they just weren't able to record on the click, and they never record. Anyway, maybe on an album or two. I don't know if it was always, but for at least
somebody will let you know. Somebody's typing right now.
Yeah, probably. You're wrong, Chris.
Yep.
I probably is.
Yep.
I probably am. But
yep,
one of those bands, they just recorded flat out without a click.
Yeah.
Playing together in the studio.
Yeah.
It sounded great.
They made music.
Okay. So, but for me, I'm in a world where there was a lot of overdubs.
We're dependent on edits
involved.
Between takes.
Yeah. So that is like, for me, it's like kind of a no-go. I love working on the click.
The only other thing I would say is there's something to, can these people play on a click in a healthy, natural way? And I've come across situations where I'm like, you know what, guys, let's take one for the team here.
Yeah.
And just
you're right.
Yeah, like you're 20 and you've never done this, and like it's freaking you out. You're a brilliant player until I put the click on, and then you become a caveman.
Because that's not easy. It's not easy to play. You need to get used to it. It's something you need to train for as a drummer, especially, because at some point you get to the point, the more you play with a click, the more you'll get kind of, you reach a point where you feel the music and you feel the playing. You have a lot of emotion.
And you learn how to work the click.
And you work the click
know how to move
around
between
you.
clicks,
Exactly.
right?
You can just lay back a bit or rush it a bit, but you still
play
stay
with it. Play with it. And to our earlier conversation, for our young producer friends, this is part of, to me, the producer conversation. Hey, you guys are in the studio in 2 months. Can you please make sure that you're practicing to a click? You're the drummer in this project. Can you make sure that you know your tempos, you've practiced to them, right? Like, I don't want to find the tempo, and that's another advantage of the click. Like, they think they're playing the tempo, and 3 weeks after the album's mixed, they're like, we played that song so fast in the studio.
Yeah, exactly.
How many times I've heard that, right?
Yeah,
so come in with your tempos, because you've been practicing to a click over time when you're comfortable in your rehearsal space, and you guys agree this is the tempo or whatever, right? So we're not fighting about click tempos in the studio. Anyway, so yeah, all that to say, it doesn't hurt.
No, it's not. No, it doesn't. It doesn't. Yeah. And especially, I would say it's easier when mixing also, when everything's the same tempo, especially when you're working with
just put bars on the screen.
Time-based delays and stuff like that.
Yeah. You know? But at the same time, it's just music. Right? So there's something there too. So if you're going to break the song or break the music or break something by using a click, that's when I bail. Right? Mm-hmm. If I'm listening in the control room with the click off and it sounds like something's wrong, that's what it is.
Exactly.
Oftentimes, right?
Exactly.
So,
and when are you going to put a click on when recording? Like for example, you're recording a full band, drum, guitar, bass.
Yeah.
Okay. Who's going to get the click? The drummer only, or are you going to send the click to everyone?
Usually everyone.
Okay. Why?
Historically, for me, so they're all shooting at the same target, right? And there's a lot of we're building here, and I'm excited. So there's something about we're all pointing at the same light.
Yeah,
there's something there. I mean, even just for the top of the song, like they all know where bar 1 is, right?
Okay, let me rephrase that then. Okay, you're recording a vocal.
Yeah.
Okay. Played on she records on top of the music and stuff. Are you going to add the click while she's recording, or only?
Typically not.
Not typically.
Unless she asks for it.
Exactly.
If you have a very experienced artist, they will ask for it. Oftentimes, because they're like, oh, there's that gap before the bridge, or like they'll know. So a lot of times I'll turn clicks on and off.
There you go.
I'll do that quite a bit.
That's what I do.
I'll volume automate. So I'll start them on the click and then it disappears over time. I'll do that a lot. And then it comes back at the end of the chorus where that gap is or whatever. So I'll do that real quick as we're tracking, they do their first vocal run through.
Yeah.
I'll quickly automate the click in and out or whatever. But no, at that point, it's just music. Now I just want heart. I don't need technical.
No, exactly. Yeah. I did like I said earlier. A lot of the production that I produced were overdubs.
Yeah.
So you start with the drums, the bass, and then you build that up.
Of course.
But at some point, I was recording live with the bass player, so that was kind of our thing. So drum and bass together.
Yeah.
Always.
Yeah.
And he never wanted to click.
Interesting.
He just wanted to have more kick and snare.
Interesting. Yeah, and a lot of it is just comfort.
It's like, oh man, and it locked so well.
Yeah, everybody's got their own thing. It's like in-ear mixes or something.
Yeah, because for me it's kind of distraction. Okay, are you gonna? If I go off the click, are you gonna follow the click or are you gonna follow me?
Yeah, yeah, interesting.
so
That's interesting.
It's kind of I can see some situation where the click can be a distraction.
Yeah, and back to our earlier topic, a decent producer is going to feel what's happening in the room.
Of course.
And you'll know who the culprit is.
Yep.
The click that just appeared is the problem, right? You were great until then.
Exactly, yes.
And then again, to the earlier comments, like just being confident enough in yourself and them to just go, you know what, guys, let's try without the click for a bit. Or let me give you 4 bars of click and then you come in and I'll kill it or whatever, right? Like
exactly.
There's all these things that you just tricks and tools and just get the best out of the people.
It's I guess it's a case by case thing. For most of the time, I do use a click, but again, I told you about the project I worked on where we didn't use a click.
Yeah.
For that live acoustic.
I feel so much better if I have a click running. I feel comfort from a click. To me.
Yeah, same here.
To me, it's just it's my safety net. I know I'm good.
I know. Yeah.
Otherwise, I'm triple thinking everything. Right. Like so. There's something to that. So it's just comfort.
It is.
And what era you grew up in playing. There's a bit of that too. Right? Like there are modern guys that are just can't play without a click, right? They just know it. It's all they've known.
Yeah.
Practice with it. You learned with it. So yeah.
Are you a modern guy?
In that way I am.
Good.
I love it.
Because you scared me at first. We're talking about, those albums back in the day.
Back in the day. Speeding up.
Speeding up.
It's beautiful too though. It's human.
It is.
There's a bunch of people in the room who are excited and we go faster. So the answer is?
Yeah. When we're excited, we go faster.
And when we're sad, we end the podcast.